All right. Well, hello there. It is Dr. Siobhan here, founder of Relatable, your marriage coach, helping you to create a happier and more loving marriage, all without having to make over that husband. So I am continuing on with my series on how to surrender, and I'm surrendering to this process. So I don't know how many parts it's going to be. Right now, we're on part 3. And what I'm going to do, because this is really important, is I'm going to share this live stream as it's happening right now. I encourage you to do the same if you happen to be catching it live, because you never know who is on Facebook right now who could use a little bit of help surrendering, right? We are sort of control freaks by nature. I think I am definitely guilty of that. I am sort of a type A planful person. And it's really hard for me to sort of take my hand off of the wheel and to allow a process to unfold however it's going to unfold. I like to know ahead of time. I want to plan. And this is all about surrendering. So what I'm sharing in this series is just what I'm learning personally about surrendering to a variety of different things in my life. I think where I'm consciously being intentional about surrendering is as it relates to my book. So for those of you who follow me or have known me for a while, I just wrote my first book. So exciting and so like nerve-wracking at the same time, because you put your heart and soul into something and you never know how people are going to respond to it. And so there are dreams and goals that I have related to this book, and I've been so conscious and so intentional to just let God do with it whatever he's going to do with it. And part of that is being very conscious to practice surrendering. And that's what I'm sharing in this series right now. So we're on part 3. Part 1 was all about trusting that God's plan is better than your plan. And part 2, oh my gosh, I hope I can remember what part 2 was. I'm going to like embarrass myself because I don't remember exactly what part 2 was. And I'm going to regret that later. So if any of you caught part 2, it can type in the comments what part 2 was about. I'm sure that will help everyone. If not, go back and look at that video. It says how to surrender part 2. And guess what? After I'm done with this live stream, I'm going back there to figure it out myself. But anyways, I did come on here today to talk about part 3. And part 3 is about detaching. And I've heard that before. Like, again, I've been studying a lot of these principles for some time now, but I never really understood what it meant to detach from what it is that you want. It's like, how can you really want something? How can you have a goal? How can you be trying to achieve something if you detach from it? Like, where's your motivation? Where's your drive? All of that stuff. So I want to talk about detachment from 2 very specific aspects. And the first one is detaching from what you think your outcome, your goal, your desire should look like. So that means that you probably have in your mind a picture of something you want to see changed in your life, something that you want in your life. It could be a financial breakthrough, right? It could be a job. It could be a house. It could be a car. It could be a particular type of relationship. It can be the mending of a particular type of relationship. Whatever the case may be, right? You have something in your heart, in your mind, in your spirit that you're wanting to be a reality that probably at this point is not quite a reality. And so when we think about surrendering and we think about detaching, it means that you really sort of release it from having to be that thing. So it means that you release yourself. Hi, Crystal Lee. It means that you release yourself from maybe that particular job or that particular house, or your husband having that particular type of change of his heart or change in behavior or change in mindset, whatever it is that you're wanting to be different about him. And so detaching from the outcome means that you focus more on the feeling you want to feel. Because the only reason you want that particular outcome is because of how you think it's going to make you feel. So if you want a particular job, right? You want that job because you feel like that job's going to provide you with validation, that job is going to provide you with a certain level of income, that job is going to provide you with a certain level of status, right? Or in the context of marriage, you want maybe your husband to change, and maybe you want him to put forth more of an effort, or maybe you want him to really, exert himself to get a job, or maybe you want him to communicate with you differently. The reason you want that outcome is because of how you think it's going to make you feel, right? You want it because that's going to provide you with confidence. You want it because that's going to provide you with security. You want it because you think that's going to provide you with love and appreciation. And so when you focus so much on one particular way of achieving the feeling that you want, you cut yourself off from it coming in a different form, right? So it doesn't have to be that job that's going to give you the confidence, that's going to give you the income that you want. It doesn't have to be that particular house that's going to make you feel all excited to entertain and invite your friends over and all of those things, right? You don't need that particular financial breakthrough in order to, meet all your needs. And I know that if you're just hearing about some of these concepts, this may be a really difficult thing to grasp. But it's so key to truly surrendering. And again, you have to rely back on the fact that God's plan is better. It's always better. No matter what we see in front of us right now, his plan is always better. And I'm remembering a little bit about what part 2 was, which was staying the course, essentially. I talked about this detour on this road that I had been on, and how, many cars, when they saw the traffic jam, they just made a U-turn, and how I stayed the course, and how there were so many things that the traffic people were putting in place to make the way smoother. And so in part 2, I talked about the same with God, that what do you do when you feel like what you're wanting and what you're asking him for is not happening, when it feels like you're having a roadblock where you can't see evidence that anything is happening? And you have to trust and believe that down the way, right, he's moving, he's still working it out, that so many things have to be in place to provide you with the desires of your heart. So that was part 2. I'm so glad that I remembered that. But now back to part 3, which is where we are today. Again, detach yourself from the specific outcome. It doesn't have to fit in this particular box, and focus instead on what it is you want to feel. Focus in on the peace that you want, the joy that you want, the fulfillment that you want, and release it to God, right? Just tell him, Lord, my desire is to have true peace, or my desire is to feel secure. However you want to bring that into my life, I am open to it. I step aside so that you can give me that very thing that's going to meet my need, right? Because it doesn't have to look the way you think it looks. So that's part number 1 of detaching, which is what we are focusing on today. Detaching from the specific outcome that you have in your mind. And then the part 2 related to detachment is you have to detach yourself from the process being and looking a certain way, and you have to detach yourself from a particular timeline, right? So impatient woman, number 1, number 2, number 3, it's all me, all day. So impatient. I want things just like that, right? There's this song that I love. It's called Your Will Is What's Best for Me, I think. And it's I wish I could just snap my fingers and you give it to me just like that. How many of us feel that way with God sometimes? We just ask for something and we wish so much that he would just give it to us. We go to sleep, make the prayer, and tomorrow when we wake up, it's in our hands. I know that we want that, right? And so detaching from a particular process and detaching from the timeline is so important to surrendering. Right? What if right now, you're looking for maybe a financial blessing, and you're praying that God would give you, let's just say like $10,000 to cancel a debt or something like that, right? What if, right? What if you knew that by maybe if God doesn't answer it right now in the way that you hope he will, that in a year from now, you might have a financial windfall 10 times greater? Would you trust him then? Would you detach from your particular way that you think it should happen and by when it should happen? Now, that's not to say that God can't move and can't offer you a blessing immediately to meet some pressing need that you have, because he's absolutely able to do that, and exceedingly and abundantly. But if you are so caught up in it has to happen right now. Like this has to be the moment. This has to be the time. And when that time comes and goes, and if you haven't seen what it is you've been hoping for, then you're so much likely to give up, right? You're so much more likely to give up and think that God has said no. But you've heard the saying before, right? A delay is not a denial. And so we have to trust that God's process of unfolding and providing us with whatever it is we have asked for him, as long as it's within his will and as long as it's for the greater good of the world and others, right? He's not as interested in those selfish requests that are just about you and your needs. And so one of the litmus tests that I like to pass my own request through is, how will God be glorified if he honors this request of mine, right? Because he's looking to be lifted up, right? He's looking to be glorified. And that is our duty as his children, is to glorify him and honor him in all that we do. So if the things that we are asking him are really just from a place of our own selfish desires, then we have to sort of check ourselves and release and consider, like, yes, I want this house, or yes, I want this car, or yes, I want this job, or yes, I want this certain situation in my marriage. But how will God get the glory from that desire that you have? So that was like a side note. I probably could have had another part 4 just for that piece. But again, back to the process, right? Detaching from the process, that it has to happen on your timeline and that it has to happen in a certain sequence of steps that you think makes the most sense, right? Because his ways are higher than our ways, and his ways are better. No matter what we think we know, right? We have such limited eyesight, and he's seen the future 100 times over, right? And he's basing his decision and his moves on that. And so we've got to trust him. We've got to surrender. And so you may be wondering, like, how do you know? Like, how do you know if you're surrendering? How do you know if you're detaching from a particular outcome? How do you know if you're detaching from a particular way and pathway that you believe your blessing will come to you? How do you know if you're detaching from your own timeline? And to me, I came up with this phrase that is quite simple to understand, but not simple to actually apply and implement, and I recognize that. So the way you know if you are surrendering, the way you know if you are detaching from all these things that I've outlined to detach from today, is when you're more curious to how it's all going to work out than controlling how it's all going to work out, right? Curiosity. I love curiosity. It's like, I think of like a small child, and curiosity is all about, like, let me just see how this goes, right? It's light. It's easy. His burden is light. His yoke is easy. You know that, right? And so it's all about just being curious. Like, God, you've given me this desire. I want to see how you're going to do it. And you sort of like sit back and just wait for him to do it. It feels so good to be in that place where you don't have the pressure of trying to figure it out, but you're just like, God, I'm going to sit back and like watch you move. Like, how are you going to fix this? Because I know you're going to. How are you going to make this situation work out for my good? Like, I'm like in excited anticipation for how you are going to work this thing out, because you have already promised me the victory. So I have no doubt about that. I have no doubt that you are able, right? Our God is well able. So it's coming from a place of curiosity for how it's going to work itself out rather than feeling you have to control how it's going to happen, right? Subtle difference. And when you are controlling, you're trying to put things in place yourself. You're trying to you know, influence and, control other people so that all the ducks in a row and all the things are working out just the way that you want them to. But you know that you have surrendered and you know that you have detached from the outcome, the process, and the timeline when you are more curious about how it's going to work out versus controlling how it's going to work out. So that's what I have for you in part 3 of surrendering. If you have just joined this live stream, I really encourage you to watch it from the beginning. I feel like I'm going to have to watch it from the beginning myself because it has been eye-opening for me, even as I've just shared this message with you. And this is all the stuff that I'm learning, that I'm applying in my own life right now. And so I hope that it has benefited you. I hope that it has given you a new perspective on how to truly surrender and to trust our God, to trust your Father who will withhold no good thing from you, right? Like, what if you really believed that God will withhold no good thing from you? Believe it, right? Because he's not. If you have children of your own, like if they ask you for anything, like you are racking your brain trying to figure out how to give it to them. And so it is with God. He's already working it out. Like the minute you asked for it, he went to work on your behalf. But you have to detach from the outcome of what you think is going to make you happy and focus instead on being open to how God wants to fulfill that need inside of you because he knows how best to meet it. He created you, right? You have to detach yourself from this process of A has to happen, then B has to happen, then C has to happen in order for me to be happy. You have to detach yourself from that. And the timeline, right? So if your deadline is 1 month from now and it hasn't happened in 1 month, then what? Delay is not denial. Trust God's timing. It is always perfect. So again, if you are just tuning in, please watch this from the beginning because I really hope that it will bless you and encourage you no matter what it is that you are going through right now. And if you did find this valuable and you think, you know what, someone else may need to hear this message, feel free to share it, right? I can't tell you how many times I'm so grateful for things that people have shared on Facebook because it's spoken to a need that I had at that exact moment. So I encourage you, if you found this helpful at all, share it with a friend in a private message, share it on your timeline, whatever the case, but don't keep this to yourself if it's benefited you, right? So thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for following me, for being with me. I am so grateful to all of you that value what it is I share. I am just a vessel. I am just a vessel. And I'm so grateful to God for the inspiration that he gives me and the courage he gives me to share my messages with you. So have an incredible, incredible night. And I will be back with you for part 4 sometime soon. Like I said before, I have 2 small children, so it's really hard for me to say I will be back exactly this time because life is a little bit chaotic. But I will be back with part 4 sometime really soon. Have a great night. Bye-bye.